Hello and welcome to On Air with me, Murli Nair. Today we move to Ballarat, Victoria, in Australia, where we meet someone who's brought healing to many. Her name is Carolyn Gower. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thanks, Mary Lee. Thanks for having me.
Carolyn, may I start by asking you, what was the route that brought you to this vocation?
Sure. In, I guess I'll go back to the start. So in 2011, I met my future husband, Tony. We'd both been married before, been through not so nice divorces. And we met each other in our late 40s and we just clicked and were fell madly in love and we're enjoying a wonderful life together. Then, 5 months after that, he was diagnosed with terminal prostate cancer. So, just like that, our time became limited. So, we decided to make the most of what time we had together. We got married. We really enjoyed life as much as we could around the cancer treatment and everything that entailed. Then in 2017, Tony passed away from his cancer. And that was when I was kind of, I guess, thrown into the world of grief. And I'd been through the loss of, grandparents and such before, but when it's your life partner, and he was 53 at the time, it's a whole different ball game. So I soon realized that the world we live in doesn't do very well with grief. So everyone's a bit grief illiterate, I guess you'd say. And I felt very unseen, unheard, and judged in the way I was grieving. And it was something I didn't expect. And I I soon found that it was something that I didn't want others to go through. So by sharing my experiences, if I was able to help others through their pain and their grief, that was something I was really passionate about doing.
Carolyn, you position yourself as a grief coach. And
Yes.
what does that entail broadly before we, sort of narrow
Sure.
down?
So, a grief coach is someone who supports people who are grieving. So, I have trained to be a life coach as well as lots of grief education around that, and also as a grief educator to help people learn about grief. So, I help people uh, navigate their grief, learn how to find their way through it, give them lots of tips and strategies to help them through what they're going through, and to gradually get to the point where they can rebuild a life that feels whole again. It feels like them and feels meaningful again after they've been through such a significant loss.
Now, Carolyn, you mentioned that when you were going through this grieving, you actually did not know that you were grieving. You just felt different emotions. How can I, as an individual, know that I'm actually grieving?
It was a very sad place. I felt very alone because no one seemed to understand what I was going through. And just naturally, people around you want to try and fix you. So they try to cheer you out of it. They don't acknowledge, your grief, your pain, what you're going through. But if you look at the definition of grief, it's a natural and normal reaction to loss. And that could be loss by death or loss of a relationship, a job, something significant in your life. So it's very normal to grieve at those points of time. But the natural human instinct is that people want to fix you, they want to cheer you up, they want you to feel better because they feel uncomfortable being around you and they don't know how to deal with you. So it's it's a lot simpler than what it thinks. It's more about recognizing what people are going through because I believe all emotions are valid. We're sad for a reason, we're happy for a reason, we're angry for a reason. Every emotion that we feel is valid, but people try to push us out of them instead of helping us work through them and process them and working out why, and then finding ways that can make us feel better.
So basically, there's grief illiteracy. Would you
Yes,
agree with me?
yes.
And if I were to ask you, what are the five most common grieving instances or situations that people face that you've encountered?
So there is, I forget what it's called, but there's a scale that has the most challenging, hardest, life events that you can come across. And I do know that death of a partner is at the top of the list. So that's seen as the worst thing that you can go through in life. There are other things, there are other losses. So I can't remember the order of them, but I imagine death of a child would be high up there as well. As other deaths are, there's also things like divorce or breakup of a relationship. There might be loss of a job is a big one as well. If it's, some people their job is their whole life. They're very passionate about. It's a big part of their life. And it's not only the workplace, the job that you miss, the role, it's the people in your workplace. There's with any loss, there's a ripple effect of other losses that come along with it. So it's not just the one thing. So those sorts of things, it can be an illness, a serious illness, or loss of a limb, the inability to walk or do things that you used to do. So I guess it's anything that's life changing, anything that can change your normal day to day life, will come with some grief.
That's very interesting. Summary of what grieving is all about. But as an individual, Carolyn, how would I know that I'm grieving? I might just feel that I'm feeling very, very sad, but how do I get it that I'm actually grieving? I need help.
So I guess first up, if there's something you can identify that has been one of those losses for you, um, something that's missing from your life that was there, uh, identifying that you could be grieving from that as a result of that. And there's so many different levels of grief. Everyone's grief is unique to them. We say it's a bit like a fingerprint, so it's as unique as that. Some people will grieve very differently than what others do. So generally, you're going to have that feeling of sadness, all different levels, as I said. It might be that you feel, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know how I'm going to live with this sadness every day for the rest of my life. A lot of those feelings are quite normal in grief. You do need to be a bit careful if you're someone that tends to have some mental health issues around that, or you start having feelings of not wanting to live. You'll definitely need to be seen by a professional if those things do come up. But general grief, you will have that level of sadness, and you will know there's been something, some sort of loss in your life that you can identify it to. Whereas some other forms of, mental health issues might be feeling sad for no reason. Whereas grief usually comes with some type of loss.
Right. So it's an identifiable, significant loss that has changed your life.
Yeah. And it
So
might be something that you think is not really that huge or that important. It could be loss of a friendship, a person that you enjoyed spending time with, and suddenly something's happened. They might have taken something you said the wrong way, and they're not wanting to be involved in your life anymore, and they cut you off, and that can lead to grief because it was a friendship that you valued, and you no longer have that.
now just asking. Is there a gender difference in the way men and women grieve?
There is a little bit. As I said, everyone's grief is different. It's unique to them. So, whoever it is, it can be different. Every female can grieve differently to each other.
Right.
But generally, as far as what I work with most is widowhood. So men will um, grieve a little bit differently with that. And depending on the age group as well, because a lot of men, if they're a little bit older, they've been brought up in the era that, you don't show your emotions, you just suck it all in and go on with life and be tough, be strong, and you don't talk about emotions. So that will be different. But I've found over the past few years, especially, that men are more open to talking about their feelings, and I can see them really benefiting from it. So yeah, there is that bit of difference, but men are sort of becoming more open to talking about it than they used to be.
With younger people, for instance, who are so digitally hooked, um, is cyber attacks or a digital bullying something that could cause grief for them or generally?
Yes, yeah, and we see a lot of that around at the moment. Unfortunately, it's terrible at the moment, and hopefully there'll be schools in particular and parents finding some ways to help educate kids a bit more along those lines. But definitely that can lead to grief and, as we know, serious mental health concerns with a lot of young people taking their life. So I think that falls in a different category. It's, a lot of grief relating to death and these other situations is mostly pure grief that is not, it doesn't need to be pathologized. It's a result of something happening. Whereas when you get into the bullying type of grief, that can lead to very serious mental health concerns. So it's something that you really need to keep a closer eye on and get professional help and have interventions in place in a lot of different avenues through school and home and all that sort of thing.
Carolyn, in our earlier discussion, you had mentioned that you've developed a kind of a matrix that is helpful for to understanding grief better. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, sure. So when grief comes up, a lot of people tend to think of the five stages of grief, which were developed by Swiss American psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross back in 1969. And they're all fine, as they are. They're more about emotions, but they've been highly misunderstood for many years. And people will mistakenly think that's what you do. You go through these five stages in order, then your grief's all done. Where even she herself said at the time that is not the case. But I've come up with a new way to look at grief that I call the three eras of grief. So, first we have the survival era, and that's more about the early days of grief. So, the grieving first starts or the incident happens, and it's where you're just trying really hard about long term. You just can't picture that you can get through this. It's all very feeling very, dark and negative at that time. And the best thing you can do is just focus on getting through each hour and each day one at a time without looking too far ahead. And the next era is reckoning. So the reckoning era. And that's where the numbness of grief starts to fade. So initially, you're in a bit of a fog. It's all consuming in the survival era. You're in this fog and you're just focusing on keeping going. Whereas after that, when that fog starts to lift, you hit this reckoning era where everything becomes real. You feel the full impact of the loss. Um, and these are mostly relating to loss by death. So the reckoning era is one of the hardest eras to go through because everything becomes real. You know, it's not going to change. Your person can't come back. And this is you, you're stuck in this time and you have to find your way forward. And then number three is the reclamation era. And in this era is when you start to find ways to rebuild your life again. You start to find little pockets of joy and work out, what you want to do. You start asking questions like, how do I want my life to look now? What's important to me now? Because that will change. Significant loss will change your view on the world. It'll change your perspective. It might change the way you want to live moving forward. So the reclamation era is about really digging deep and asking yourself those questions and finding your way forward to build a life that you feel happiness in again and you feel fulfilled and a life that does bring you joy. And I want to be really clear that these are not linear. You can be in the reckoning era and have, 1 foot in the survival era and 1 foot in the reclamation era, and still the rest of you be in the reckoning era. So it's a bit all over the place. It's not just you go from here to here to here, but you will pass through those three eras at some point. And
It's
it's
a kind of
also,
a churn, isn't it?
yes, yeah, yeah. Do you know the game Twister where you have the round spots on the mat on the game and you've got your hands here and you have to put one here and a leg there? It's a bit like a game of grief Twister. So you can be all over the place as you find your way. And these changes from one era to the next can happen quite subtly. So it can be just slowly you sort of moving from one era to the next. And I think it's important to point out that grief isn't just an emotion. It's not just sadness. It's not the one big thing that people relate it to. Grief, I think, is more like a container that holds everything that grief brings with it. So, for instance, grief doesn't just affect your mind, your heart, your emotions. I like to think of it as four dimensions. So, for instance, there's grief in your mind, there's grief in your body because your body is very affected by grief. There's grief in your heart, and there's grief in life because your whole life around you, as you knew it, will change when there's been a significant loss.
That's a very, very apt description. Grief is a container.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Um, as a follow-up question, Carolyn, um, I know that for instance, I meet someone or I know someone who has just had a significant loss, and I want to help him without being insensitive, patronizing, or saying stupid things. How should I go about doing that?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that because, as I said before, grief is a topic that makes most people very uncomfortable. And as a griever myself, I've been in this situation where I've been in the supermarket and I see someone that I know walking towards me, and I think, okay, I'll brace myself to talk to them. It's early days after loss, and next thing they've disappeared. So they duck up another aisle of the supermarket to avoid talking to you. And I know most people will mean well and they might say the wrong thing, but they will mean well. So the best advice I can give is if you don't know what to say just that. I'm really sorry this has happened to you. It must be horrible, but I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you. The worst thing you can say is anything that begins with at least. So the two words at least, take them right away from anything that you want to say to someone who's grieving because it's looking for a silver lining that isn't there. So, common one I heard when Tony died was, at least he's not in pain anymore. And that was on the day that he died. I heard that over and over again. And I was in the worst pain of my life. And I was thinking, but I'm in pain. Can't you see my pain? I felt very unseen. It felt like I should be not grieving because he's not in pain, so I should be happy. And it's not like that at all. And, we often hear, at least you're young enough to find someone else, or a parent who's lost a child. At least you've got other kids, or at least you can still have another baby. And all of these things take away from the pain that you're now feeling. So sometimes they may be true, but it just makes the person who's grieving feel much worse because they feel like they're grieving wrong, they're not heard, they're not understood, and it leaves them feeling terrible. So the best things are listen to them, don't try and fix them, validate their feelings. Yes, that must be horrible. Tell them you don't know what to say. Stay away from at least anything where you're just trying to cheer them up, fix them, disregard their grief and their pain is sending a message to them that, well, it's basically sending a message that they can't talk to you about their grief. So they will stop talking to you about their grief. And if you're someone really close to them who really wants to genuinely support them, now that's not very nice. You do want to be there for them. And you might think, oh, they're not talking to me about it. They're fine. They've moved on. But it's just that the case is most likely that they know they can't talk to you because you don't understand them. So those simple things, especially listen, can make all the difference in the world.
Carolyn, if you are a carer for someone who is grieving, um, it is quite. I believe that is it can be infectious and affect the carer as well. Um, and how can the person who is actually the primary griever, so to speak, support the carer, or is that an impossibility?
Um, Depends where the griever is in their grief journey. So if it's early days of grief, the griever will just won't have the capacity to be able to sort of focus on anyone's
So that
else's
would be the survival when that
in
person
the
is in the
survival era.
survival era.
Yes, yes. So because grief brain is real as well. So grief has a big impact on your brain. So your concentration, your motivation, you're extremely fatigued. So it's very hard to think straight in those very early days. So the care for the carer themselves would really fall on them. So if anyone's listening to this and they are a supporter or a carer for someone who is in deep grief, please do make sure that you put yourself first. Please prioritize your own self-care because you can't support them if you get sick or feel worn out or fatigued. So make sure you yourself get plenty of rest, eat as well as you can, get some movement, get some sunlight, all those basic things, sleep well to, look after your own health if you're busy supporting someone who's really heavy in grief, because you can. A lot of us can take those emotions and carry them with us, and they're very heavy and they're, exhausting. So it's important to look after yourself as well and to take a break from them. So if you're there with them a lot during the day, especially in the first week, make sure you take a break, take some time out for yourself as well.
No, that's very good advice, Carolyn, because what I've discovered is that a lot of carers are neglected and
Yeah.
they're bearing the burden that sometimes they don't know how to deal with as well.
That's right. Yeah. It's very hard on carers as well.
So, Carolyn, just going forward, you said that grief also has a body aspect to it. Uh,
Yes.
are there physical ways that we can actually, physical techniques, for instance, for a griever to follow up, to sort of lessen the grief, or to at least relieve them temporarily, maybe?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do these days. And as people are becoming more aware that we do carry grief in our bodies as well, and trying some things, they're having great results. So, the main thing, I guess, is the nervous system is impaired. So, in grief, a lot of the time you spend time in the past. So, in the past, reliving what's happened, retelling your story, going through that over and over again in your mind, or in the future, where you worry about what the future brings. How can I get through this without, whether it's my partner or my son or daughter or whoever it might be you've lost. So you're not really living in the present moment. And when you're in that place of the past or the future, you've got no control over it. And the thing about grief is that you have no control. It takes away your control of everything anyway. So being in those places is not helpful at all because the only time we can control is in the present. So what happens is our nervous system is constantly in fight, flight, or freeze. And we just are hyper vigilant, on edge all the time, really anxious. So there's very, very quick ways to regulate your nervous system again. And it's all to do with the vagus nerve, which is a big, long nerve in our body, which is our calming center. So mindfulness techniques are the best way to do this, to bring your body back to the present moment. And mindfulness is not about blanking your mind. It's not about, trying to have nothing in your mind because that's impossible. So, what it's about is just sitting somewhere quiet, feet flat on the floor, gently closing your eyes and feeling and noticing. So, it might be noticing your breaths as you breathe in and out. It might be noticing your feet sitting on the floor. It might be the way you're sitting on this seat. And then you notice the sounds around you. So it might be, if you're outside, it might be the birds or the trees or voices in the distance. If you're inside, it might be things like if you have, say, the heater on, the hum of the heater, or the noise of the TV in the background. But these things, by just sitting and noticing these things around you, will bring you back to the present moment. And that's the only place that you've truly got any control of. So bringing yourself back to that place will bring you back to a place of control and calmness, and it will regulate your nervous system within a few minutes. It's very quick once you get used to doing it. And I really suggest for people to get in the habit of doing something like that every day because once it's a habit, you can draw on it more easily when the time comes. Because if you let yourself get really anxious and you're trying to think, what can I do? What can I do? It's hard for you to think, oh, what's that mindfulness technique? But if you already do it every day, it's quite easy for you to just grab that out of your toolkit, do it for a few minutes, and it will bring your body back to that place of calm. There's tons and tons of ways you can do it. That's a very simple, basic way. You can sit in the sunshine for a few minutes. You can walk around the block. Any of those things that will bring you more back to the present moment and get you out of that fight or flight mode.
Carolyn, just going on to some specifics. Um, in death, where you lose a partner, as well as in divorce, um, where you've just hated each other, it's been a toxic relationship. Yet,
Yeah.
when the end comes, there is plenty of grief. Why is that? I mean, one would have thought, in a real practical way, that maybe it's a bit of a relief, a respite. but it's not.
Yeah, that's a good question too. I have been through both. So I've been through a divorce where my ex-husband cheated on me and I grieved a lot. That was very painful for me because he wanted the relationship to end. I didn't, even though I do remember feeling some relief in some ways at the time, but I grieved a lot. And, you know, I think it's because we're grieving the future that we thought we'd have. When you get married, I think you have an idea of where your future's going, what will come in your life. So it might be you get married, you have kids, they grow up, you do these things together, then your kids get older, you retire, you do other things together. So you've got a loose map of what your life's going to look like. And whether that relationship was really good or, quite toxic, you'll grieve that future that you thought you were going to have, your expected future. So there's also a lot of fear with any sort of breakup. So I know in my situation, I was a young mum and suddenly I was a divorced single mum of three young children. So there was a lot of fear about the future as well. How am I going to be a single mum? How am I going to do all this by myself? How will I manage financially? So there's a lot of grief around that. When it is, I still must say though, it is different when you lose them to death because instead of being like a solo parent, a single parent, you're a solo parent. So you don't have the other parent there to share some of the roles with the children, like having them every other weekend or whatever it might be, whatever your arrangement is. You're doing everything yourself. There's no one to share the big decisions about them with. There's no one to help with them financially. It's a lot harder and worse when you're the only one there. And it's also a lot harder when they die rather than divorce, in that, they died and you still loved each other. So you didn't decide to end your relationship. And there's a saying that death ends a life, not a relationship, because neither of you wanted that relationship to end. It was out of your control. Whereas with a divorce, one of you at least, sometimes both of you, have decided that that will end. So there's a couple of differences there. And I know, widowed people will get a bit annoyed when divorced people say, I know exactly how you feel because I'm divorced. But with any grief, no comparisons are helpful. I've seen both sides. I grieved a lot in my marriage breakup. I grieved a whole lot more when my second husband died. I think the basic rule is try not to compare any losses or any grief. Just your own grief is the worst grief for you because it's you experiencing it.
Carolyn, you've brought a healing touch to this episode of On Air. Thank you very much for your time. I could speak to you for hours on end.
Yes.
It's such a relevant topic, and it's something that's going to help a lot of people. Thank you for joining me on air. It's been delightful speaking with you, although it's a very, very difficult subject. But you've
Yeah.
brought and articulated this beautifully. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me, Murali. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And to you, our viewers, please like, subscribe, and also visit Carolyn Gower. She's got her own podcast. There's plenty of material there. I hope you'd visit her podcast and learn more about this particular topic called grieving. Thank you very much.
Like, comment, and subscribe.